Eagles fans, welcome to another edition of Football 24/7 with John McMullen. I am your humble host, Tone DeShields II, the producer, the man behind the scenes, and also the host of JAKIB Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. First things first, as I always do, I like to check in with my guys. John, how are you feeling this evening?
Doing well, Tom. Here we are, day two. Exciting, really day four, but you know, we'll say it day two, or that's when we get to see day two.
Yeah, it's so funny because in the midst of me preparing for the show, I'm sitting in my studio and I'm counting the days. I'm like, okay, well, day one was technically the day we
Tuesday.
did the first, then technically Tuesday, but we labeled the show day one because of day one of open practice. But the guys have pretty much been at the Novacare complex since about Tuesday. This is day two of open practice coverage. And there's so much to discuss as always, so many storylines to get into. Let's start with your overall assessment of day two of Eagles training camp. Was it a green practice, a yellow practice, a red? What was your overall
It
assessment
was a
of
yellow
camp?
practice, 75 minutes. So for those who don't understand, back on Wednesday was a green practice, and that is what Nick Sirianni described as high intensity. This was a little bit longer. Um, they went 58 minutes on Wednesday, but not as high paced, not as fast paced. And that's their yellow practice. And the defense bounced back in a big way. I mean, they dominated today. And I joke because Vic Fangio was there, and anybody who's been watching Birds 365 has heard me say the Eagles are going to run um, a similar scheme to what Vic is famous for around the NFL. And he was there today, sort of taking things in as a guest of the Eagles. And the defense must have known he was there because they dominated. I mean, dominated. I'm to the point where, I just tried to come up with the offensive play of the day, the defensive play of the day. It was easy for the defensive play of the day. I had to spend 5-10 minutes trying to think of an offensive play to put in there. I mean, it was bad. It was bad
Man,
from an offensive perspective today. And, you know, uh, typically in the NFL, defense is ahead of the offense earlier. So from that perspective, I wouldn't get too concerned. But yeah, this was as dominant a practice for one side as you're ever going to see. And for people who are saying, McMullen's negative, and they always say we're picking on Jalen Hurts or we're picking on so and so. Well, number one, go back to Wednesday. I said he performed very well. But number two, listen to Jason Kelsey, because Jason Kelsey admitted after practice, yeah, we stunk. We got our, what, whooped today from the defensive side. The offense was not good.
yeah, absolutely. Especially, like you said, when a guy like Jason Kelsey, calls out the offense for having a bad day, the proof must be in the pudding. But this has to give Jonathan Gannon some level of leeway with the media and the fans, just a little bit, right? Jonathan Gannon, he's been preaching that he wants to have an extremely versatile defense. He wants versatile players that are multiple. And it's so ironic that Vic Fangio was in attendance. Like you said, this defense is being modeled. Most defenses actually are being modeled after what Vic Fangio has pioneered, I guess you would say. Um, and Fangio gets a lot of credit for Jonathan Gannon's style in general. Well, before we get to Jonathan Gannon specifically, were you able to actually chat with Fangio, or I guess pick his brain as to why he was there, or why he showed up today versus any other day?
No, it's not. Gunnar Brewer was also there, former Eagles wide receiver coach. Did get to catch up with him for a few minutes, but it's not rare. It's typical for coaches to go around. Doug Peterson last year, people got all crazy when he went to visit the Bears. And he was out there wearing bear stuff, and people went nuts. And he was just out visiting Matt Nagy, who's a good friend of his, and those two were together here and in Kansas City. Um,
Right.
Vic is he's Philadelphia sports fan. Had been, obviously he's been a coach for a very long time, but um, just visiting. Last year it was Mike McCoy. Mike McCoy was in here a lot. And I got 100 people because I got the picture of Vic and I put it up on Twitter. I got 47 Eagles fans saying, "Oh, let's fire Gannon." They're not firing Jonathan Gannon. I mean, just stop it. And Vic Fangio, look, you never say never. Yeah, I'm sure the Eagles would love to bring him in as a consultant if he wanted to work this year. He wants to be a head coach again. He probably should still be a head coach. You know, as evidenced by the fact how many teams in this league want to run his defense. But even because the league is so offensive minded, even if he doesn't become a head coach, and it looks like he's going to take, uh, obviously, he's going to take this year off from that perspective. Um, he will have his choice of where he wants to go as a defensive coordinator if he wants to restart his career in that particular position. So um, you never say never as a consultant because he's if he's willing to do it, the Eagles would certainly be open to it. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, Tone. I mean, it's pretty evident he's going to take the year off and decide where he's going to go last season. And, but it's good to pick his brain. And he was in, and I'm sure Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon picked his brain. And coaches do it all the time.
Absolutely. And Jonathan Gannon, he's in a position where he has to put up or shut up. This defense can't afford to have another lackluster season like they did last year. And if we're being completely honest, like I mentioned, Jonathan Gannon, he wants his defense to be versatile and multiple. And he claims that he wants this defense to be able to adapt to any situation, be able to adapt to any opposing offense. You know, has he honestly shown a willingness to adapt so far when you think about his 2021 campaign and some things you've seen in training camp?
Um, just by the fact that I'm kind of torn on this because I kind of say, at what point does it become um, better to zig when everybody else is zagging? Like, there's so many teams that are running big system. At one point, if everybody does the same thing, it becomes okay. Who does it best? You know, there's something to say for going against the grain and doing something different, which I think kind of defines Bill Belichick better than anybody else. Like, Bill doesn't give a rat's what about what everybody else is doing. Everybody calls the NFL a copycat league because it is a copycat league. But he's got tremendous gravitas. He doesn't have to copy. You know, it's tough for Jonathan Gannon. People they criticize Jonathan all they want, but he's like everybody else in this league. You know, um, he doesn't have the gravitas of one or two guys, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, people like that. Maybe throw a Pete Carroll in there, Mike Tomlin, um, guys who've been around a long time. Um, it's tough for him to go out on the reservation and say, I want to do something different than anybody else. It's easy to say, it's tough to do. Um,
Does that
so I'm
speak to
kind
his lack of
of,
pedigree in the NFL?
well, yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think people look at it like you can do whatever you want. And that's not the case for 95% of the coaches. They have people to answer to. They have GMs to answer to. They have owners to answer to. There are very, very few people that can just say, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. Very few. You can count them on one hand. So,
Owners and GMs want something, and sorry to cut you off, but I just want to make sure we're dissecting this right. Owners and GMs, essentially what you're saying is They're not just going to allow someone to come in and just
No.
play cowboy with their organization. They want someone who's going to come in with a tried and true formula. And if you're successful, then maybe we'll give you some leeway. Am I on
Exactly.
my own point?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the assumption that he's any different than any other coach you would bring than Nick Sirianni, for some reason, Philadelphia has not taken a shine to Jonathan Gannon. Everybody around the league has. Nick Sirianni's the same way. Um, he can't do whatever he wants. That's evidenced by the fact that they practice 58 minutes. Nick can go up there, and I say it all the time with Jody on Birds 365. He can say all the time that, oh, I'm on board with this, I'm on board with that. He's the most competitive guy in the world. He's not on board with that. If you tell me Nick Sirianni, if you put True Serum and Nick Sirianni and you say, oh, Nick, you could have 13 practices in the spring, but we're only going to use 5 of them. He's on board with that?
Yeah.
Bull bleep, as they say, Tone. No, he's not on board with that. He's a young coach who doesn't have a lot of cachet, doesn't have a lot of gravitas, and he's got to go along with what Howie Roseman believes, what Arston Oda believes. And if he wins, maybe that changes a little bit. Maybe that tide turns a little bit. Early? No, doesn't work like that. So I don't know what people expect from Jonathan Gannon, but he had a top 10 defense last year because he got there in a different way than a lot of the fan base likes with the talent he had. So people say, why did this guy get 3 head coaching interviews? I mean, context. You put together a top 10 defense with that talent, yeah, people are going to call.
Now, just to play devil's advocate, what do you say to those people who say, okay, I didn't see this top 10 defense. We had several quarterbacks, 9 to be exact, complete over 70%, over 73% of their passes. Five of those 9 completed over 80% of their passes, and they also allowed a 92, 93% passer in Derek Carr. Although he had a top 10 defense on paper, what do you say to those people who saw what they saw as far as these completion percentages by these quarterbacks? That's kind of hard to excuse, is it not?
Well, it's not good. I mean, their thought process was eliminate big plays, which they did for the most part. They were top 5 in the league when it came up to giving up big plays. And how do you limit big plays? Well, you play a lot of zone. You play a lot of safeties over the top. You force teams to go 15, 20 play drives, and you hope they make a mistake. It's not sexy, but when you don't have a ton of talent, it's probably the best way to go. Jonathan was honest. That's not acceptable. The 80% completion percentages, certainly not what you like. But there's the back end to that. The back end was top 5 in explosive plays. And top 5, by top 5, I mean top 5 in not giving up explosive plays. So, in a lot of ways, and one of the problems with Jalen Hurts is we all talk about completion percentage. Well, the reason why is because in the modern NFL, if you're a top tier quarterback, 65% is bad. It's bad. Drew Brees was at the end of his career, 71%. I mean, now, and that's over a full season. But the thing is, Drew kind of, as you kind of saw at the end, lost arm strength, and he was throwing everything underneath. I don't care if somebody runs a hitch and a bubble screen and gets 2 yards. That's a completion. I don't give a rat's ass. That's a win for the defense. If you give up 2 yards on a bubble screen, but it's a completion. If you're giving up a completion for 40 yards, that's different. And the goal is obviously to get better, not by any stretch of the imagination am I saying the Eagles had a good defense last year, but it was above average with below average talent. I mean, I don't know how many people had this team in the playoffs last year.
Not many.
Now they say it, maybe revisionist historians, but I don't know too many people in real time who had this team making the playoffs. And one of the reasons they made the playoffs is because they didn't give up a ton of big plays. Now, could
Yeah,
they
and
beat good teams? No, no. But
but did
should
people expect them to be good team? Like, let's be honest, right? People had this team winning 4 or 5 games coming into last season,
yeah,
right? And this team surpassed those expectations. You have people who like to move the goalposts and say, "Well, you didn't beat anybody." It's like, well, you saw our schedule prior to the season, and you said we were going to win X amount of games still, and they still managed to move above that barometer. So I guess in theory, that defense and that offense exceeded expectations, right?
yeah, I would think so. I mean, if you would have told me that defense, and you could look at it from the advanced statistics, it's not as good as top 10. So, depending what number you want to use, you can say above average, you can say below average. You can use that's the problem with numbers. You can manipulate them to go in any direction you want to go. Um, the bottom line for and really Jim Schwartz would say the same thing. So I mean the bottom line is winning football games. And the Eagles won more football games than they were supposed to win. And they generally took care of business against the teams they were supposed to beat. Now they got to take the next step and they got to take the next step and get better and be able to beat those better teams. But think about it this way. We were talking to Jason Kelsey today, and somebody who's not there a lot asked Jason, so many new pieces on offense, how is it going to work this year? And Jason looked at them and said, because Jason's always honest to a fault. He said, we don't have any new pieces. We have AJ Brown. That's it. Everybody else is back. It tells you, well, what does that tell you? It tells you the Eagles thought the pieces were together for the most part on the offensive side of the football. Good offensive line. Um, Devontae Smith, you got a good tight end. Backs are not great, but they're good. And you have Kenny Gainwell, who's ascending. And then we talk about the quarterback all the time. And, they swung for the fences with Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. So that could have changed if everything went perfectly. Defensively, Hassan Reddick, Jordan Davis, Kaiser White, James Bradbury, Chakwaski Tart. They knew. What does that tell you? That it tells you they knew they needed help from a talent perspective way more on the defensive side of the football.
You
So
know,
the Eagles are essentially telling you, okay, we had talent here. We didn't have talent here.
right.
But for whatever reason, people are blaming Jonathan Gannon. I mean, I think the Eagles defense overachieved last year. That's my opinion. To think they underachieved, it's insanity to me.
Well, let's put it in perspective. This Eagles offense, right? They averaged 26 points per game. That was ranked 12th in the NFL. By that standard, that's a playoff level of scoring. I believe 12 teams make the playoffs right now, right? Or is it 14?
Well, they made the playoffs.
Right, right. So they had a playoff level of they performed well enough throughout the season from a scoring perspective to be in the playoffs. To be able to play to be able to play in that sandbox. Now, could this team had improved from an efficiency perspective when it comes to scoring? Could this team have been more efficient scorers? Absolutely. But like you said, they felt the nucleus on offense was pretty intact. They needed to add one more piece, and that was AJ Brown. The defense is what needed most of the tune-up, most of the work, most of the injection of talent. And You also brought up the fact that this defense played above their means. They were able to limit explosive plays, and they were considered to be a top 10 defense in some respect. Now, though limiting those explosive plays are great, you are forcing the offense to be able to you're forcing the offense to have to work much harder than they should. You're forcing the offense to have to stay on the field longer than they should. Like you said, 14, 15, maybe 16 play drives, right? That's great. And that provides more opportunity for the defense to force the offense to make mistakes. And I think that is what was missing from what Jonathan Gannon was trying to do. You kept them on the field for a long time. You made them throw the ball a lot. You forced them to have to go the whole length of the field, but you couldn't force them to make a mistake. How important will turnovers be for this defense? You know, this defensive line was not able to get home. They were not able to force too many strip sacks or force the quarterback to make any mistakes. How important is it for this defense to be able to step up this season and put the offense in better positions, preferably on shorter fields? Because we all know Jalen Hurts spent more time going 80 to 90 yards every single drive rather than 40, 50-yard drives.
Well, yeah, I mean, it helps. I mean, that would help any quarterback. That would help Aaron Rodgers on down. So it's not just Jalen Hurts, but yeah, I mean, Nick and Jonathan actually talk about it constantly. The two most important statistics for both of them are turnovers and explosive plays. That's it. And those are the two stats that relate to winning most. If you win the turnover battle, we all know it's been around for years. The likelihood you're going to win a football game increases dramatically. If you win the explosive play battle, your likelihood of winning the football game spikes dramatically. Those are the two most important statistics from a defensive perspective. Yeah, the Eagles need more turnovers. Um, that's a big place. Slay had a huge year when it came to turnovers, but overall, they need more turnovers. They need more sacks, and that's the thing. I mean, in Philadelphia, for some reason, and this is what gets Jonathan in trouble. He doesn't give a rat's ass about sacks. He doesn't care. Not that he dislikes them. He'd love to have them, but it doesn't correlate to winning football games necessarily. Um, if you give up explosive plays, you're going to lose. So, and by the way, that's what Vic Fangio's defense is based upon. Lot of cover two, a lot of cover three, a lot of guys over the top, forcing you to go down the field meticulously, um, forcing you into more opportunities to make mistakes. Now, where Vic is different, and especially in Chicago and San Francisco, he had the people up front. So he had the same coverage Jonathan uses, but he had the people up front that were difference makers, whether it was Khalil Mack or people of that nature who can make plays. And that's why Hassan Reddick is so important. That's why Jordan Davis is so important. But Jordan from a different perspective, because, it's going to be Jordan's job to tie up opposing blockers. So it's not going to be sexy. And that's why I've told Jody this. I'm concerned that it's too esoteric for certain people to understand what value Jordan Davis has, because all they want is sacks. All they want is sacks. He's not getting sacks. I don't care what the Eagles say. He's going to do this. No, he's not. He's going to take up blockers, and that's going to make it easier for Hassan Reddick, and that's going to make it easier for Josh Sweat. And that's you could see it in college with Nakobe Dean. Every single one of his stinking highlights was that big guy in front of him, taking up blockers so he could make plays. Every single one of them almost. But it's tough to explain to people. these sort of intangible things that are so important to a defense.
Well, I think me and you spoke about this before. How valuable, how important Jordan Davis is to the overall success, to the overall functionality of this defense, and then even Hassan Reddick. Those are the two most important pieces on the defensive side of the ball to me. Outside of obviously, the corners and the linebackers, I think Jordan Davis and Hassan Reddick are the two coils, are the two cogs in this machine that will allow it to function, without a hitch. And in Jonathan Gannon's press conference, I want to stay on Jonathan Gannon a little longer, and then we'll transition to some
Or
other topics.
JJ. Yeah, he created a firestorm by saying Hassan Reddick is going to drop into coverage.
You knew exactly where I was going with this. So I have to ask you.
I mean, look, Hassan, what Jonathan, I've told Jonathan this before, to be honest. I think he gets himself in trouble because he's a little bit too honest. Everybody drops into coverage. Everybody. But especially since Dom Capers created the zone blitz and way back when he did, everybody drops into coverage. Last year, Hassan Reddick dropped into coverage 73 times, I think the number was, with Carolina. I don't. Do people think he's never going to drop in coverage? No, go after the quarterback on every single play. Now, what you're trying to do is create some kind of doubt in a quarterback's mind. So, it might be a zone blitz that I just said, and Hassan drops in coverage, and Avonte Maddox blitzes, for instance. Kaiser White got a sack in practice today. Maybe it's Kaiser White. Somebody drops, somebody blitzes. He's not going to be an off-ball linebacker.
Right.
What was
3 times, 17-game season, 4 times a game, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a curveball. It's a changeup. That's what he's going to be used. And it was funny because Hassan talked after practice. Hassan, and by the way, Jonathan gave it away. He called him an overhang player. So if you read the transcript, called him an overhang player, which means he's an edge rusher, not an off-ball linebacker. People don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about it. You can wring your hands about it if you want, but you don't have to worry about it. And Hassan talked after practice. He's up to 247 pounds. He typically played at about 230, 235. He wanted to add power and he wanted to add strength because he found some things working late in the season with Carolina. Does that sound like a guy who's preparing to drop into coverage a lot? Gaining 10, 15 pounds to get stronger? He knows what he's here to do. And if you don't believe me, if you don't believe Hassan Reddick, just in everything in life, follow the money. The Eagles aren't paying an off-ball linebacker who plays coverage, Kaiser White, $15 million a year. So wring your hands if you want. Hassan Reddick is going to rush the passer. Don't worry about him dropping into coverage 4 times a game. Don't worry about it. It's part of the process.
John, fans can't help but to overreact, right? This is the lifeblood of fans. Overreaction, correct?
It is, but it's frustrating at times. I mean,
you're a pro. You're a pro, John.
I'm a pro, but I get frustrated. So yeah, if somebody thinks you're going to have 65 defensive plays for the sake of argument in the game, and Hassan Reddick is going to be on the field for 60 of them, and he's going to be rushing the passer on 60. But I mean, that's insanity. What are we talking about here? I mean, that's when you should say, okay, this defensive coordinator stinks. That's when you should say it. When you have no curveballs, when you have no change-ups, when you're saying, all right, this guy's just going to rush the passer. I mean, come
Is
on.
it fair to say that's what was lacking from last year's defense? We didn't have too many curveballs. We didn't have any changeups. We were
No, they
limited
didn't have
in our
any.
pitches.
They didn't have any finishers on the pass rush. You know, what's interesting. Um, the Eagles were 31st in sacks,
Yes. Yep.
but they were top half. I forget the exact number in pressure percentage. Um, so I talk about with Brandon Grant, as great as a player Brandon has been, and it wasn't Brandon's fault last year. He got hurt in week 2, but as great as a player as he has been, he's not a finisher. He's not a finisher. So there, for the first time I can ever remember, there was a team that was top 5 in sacks and bottom 5 in pressure percentage, and it was Minnesota. Top 5 in sacks, bottom 5 in pressure percentage.
They don't get there, but when they do, they get home.
Yes, there is a trait to be a finisher. There are great finishers, and it's
Is Josh
usually
Sweat the finisher?
not to date. I mean, his career high is 7.5 sacks. You know, but guys, Chandler Jones, great finisher. Daniil Hunter, great finisher.
Khalil Mack.
Um, Khalil Mack, tremendous finisher. There is that is a trait, and that's why guys look for lengthy to have the long arms and things like that. Those tend to be the great finishers. Um, I'd rather have the higher pressure percentage than the higher sack number. Is what I'm trying to say.
I get
You'll
it.
be a better defense.
I get
And
it.
by the way, Minnesota was a bottom 5 defense. Eagles were top 10.
Wow. So it's true. Sacks don't necessarily correlate to winning. It's more so your ability to influence the game, influence the quarterback, maybe make him take a few steps, maybe make him take a few steps forward than he actually planned on doing. I was watching the press conference with Gannon, and I think this may be my last Gannon question. Right? He's just the topic of conversation today. I can't help myself. Jonathan Gannon, you asked him about Jaquaski Tart, and he had a very interesting response. All positive things, of course, but I'm curious to know what was your assessment of his thoughts and response on Tart when you asked him.
I'm a little bit surprised that Tart has started off on the second team
How come?
behind Kayvon Wallace. Anthony Harris has been he was back today, but he's one of those guys that was recovering from COVID, so they were being very careful with him. Um, and the first day of practice, the starting safeties, the first team safeties were Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace. A little bit of a surprise to me. Chakowski Tart was running with the second team. Now, part of it is he just got here. He got here in June, June 18th, June 9th, somewhere around there. So that was his first day with the Eagles because that was the dead period. OTAs are over. So I'm thinking, all right, maybe that makes some sense. But then, as I said, I went back to last year. Steven Nelson got signed 2 days before training camp. And first rep of team drills, he was the starting outside corner because the Eagles didn't have another option. Maybe the Eagles think a little bit more of Kayvon Wallace than the rest of us, or they're leading on. Ultimately, I think Tart will be in the mix, but we'll see. I mean, I say follow the money with Hassan Reddick. You should also follow the money with Jaquaski Tart. He's been on a good defense for a long time, played a lot of football. But, last year, the 49ers brought him back on a 1-year veteran minimum deal. And this year, they wouldn't even give him that. And the Eagles gave him that a little bit more with incentives. But, I mean, tells you where he is in his career. So maybe the Eagles are crossing their fingers on Kayvon Wallace and they know what they have in Jaquaski Tart. Um, Ultimately, I think it's going to be Harris and Epps, barring injury, as the starters, and then Tart will be the third safety. Um, but that's the one position where you look at and say they could probably use an upgrade.
Okay, I want to transition to the offensive side of the ball. One of the bigger stories that happened in training camp today was the Kenny Gainwell Miles Sanders combo. Apparently, Kenny Gainwell got most of the first team snaps. Actually, he got all the first team snaps from what I read, and Miles Sanders was with the second team primarily. Are there signs? Are those signs of Sanders falling out of favor, or is it just precaution to injury? Do they want to make sure Gainwell is well prepared to run with the first team if need be? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was interesting from the perspective. I can't remember the last time Miles didn't take a first team rep when he was healthy. Um, you have to go back to his rookie season, probably. Um, Took every first team rep last year, so it is a sea change. I do think they want to see what they have in Kenny Gainwell. So I think they know he's a good third down back. He's a good hurry up back. He's a very natural receiver. They want to see if he's more than that. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's a good sign for Miles Sanders. Now, I don't know if Kenny Gainwell can be a lead back in this league. And if he is, it's probably going to be more of the Austin Eckler type lead back. It's not going to be a Nick Chubb or forget about Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor.
Should Nick
It's not going
Sirianni
to be.
try to take a page out of the Brian Westbrook playbook for Kenny Gainwell?
Boy, people are skipping steps on Kenny Gainwell. We're comparing Kenny Gainwell to Brian Westbrook. I,
Well,
I
not
mean,
necessarily saying he is Westbrook, but when you think about the skill set, right? Just their style. Let's say that their style.
yeah,
Being
the
that
style
receiver,
the
that
style is
dual threat back,
similar.
right?
Um, but
He has to
yeah,
earn his
but
keep. Don't worry.
yeah. Um, I don't think he's not the guy you can give the football 25 times in a game, Kenny Gainwell. Um, but then again, either was Westbrook. Can he be that effective? I don't think so. Um, that's a tough ask for anyone. Um, did he show some positive signs? Yeah. I mean, he showed a lot of positive signs. But remember, he also got benched. I mean, he fumbled the football in Las Vegas. When Miles got hurt, people forget they went right to Kenny Gainwell. I mean, in those first whatever it was, 4 or 5 games, um, they were only using two backs, Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell. And when Miles Sanders went down in Las Vegas, they said, "All right, you're up, Kenny." And he had that big fumble inside the red zone right before halftime, and that was it. They had to go to Boston Scott, and because they needed a little bit more reliability. And moving forward, when Miles came back, it was Kenny who was out of the loop until Jordan Howard got hurt. And all of a sudden, he got another chance, at least another opportunity. Um, but people should learn from Miles Sanders' rookie season, who, by the way, Miles' rookie season was a heck of a lot better than Kenny Gainwell's rookie season.
That is true.
And people skip steps with Miles Sanders, and here we are. And now they think he stinks. Um, People are skipping steps with Kenny Gainwell.
Are there any other running backs on this roster that have caught your eye thus far? They have guys like Kennedy Brooks. I believe they also have obviously Boston Scott. Jason Huntley. Have any of those guys begin to, I guess, make a splash? I'm really intrigued by Kennedy Brooks. He's a running back that's more so that one cut back, not really a power back, not really an elusive back, but he's more so of that tweener. About 205 pounds, like 5'10", something like that. And I was looking at some film of him. I love his patience. I love his stability at the running back position. His ability to maintain his balance when running in traffic, and he has a, like I said, he has a level of patience that I think is very fascinating when he's running behind his offensive line, and I think that bodes well with the way this offensive line pushes pushes the ball down the field. In the run game, has there been any running backs that have caught your eye? Specifically,
No, no, but it's not anybody's fault. I mean, they're not allowed to put on pads for a few more days. I mean, running back is a position that you just cannot evaluate until the pads come on. And because I have no idea if Kennedy Brooks, like, I know what Boston Scott is, I know what Miles Sanders is, um, and we'll see what Kenny Gainwell is. When it comes to Jason Huntley and Kennedy Brooks, they're the only two other backs in camp. You got to see the pads. I mean, can they break tackles? I don't know. Can they break NFL tackles? Even Oklahoma's certainly a high level of college, but it's different at this level. Um, so that's one of those positions you just have to wait until the pads come on and see how physical these particular backs can be. Um, The Eagles are going to have a good running game, though. I mean, I don't care who's back there. They're going to have a good running game, and that's because of Jalen Hurts and the offensive line. The offensive line is arguably the best in football, and that +1 that Jalen Hurts gives uh, the offense is just really difficult to deal with from a defensive perspective, and that makes everything easier for the running back, whomever it is. And that's why they were all successful running the football last season. Um, and that's the good. And you saw a little bit of that today, and that might have been the only good with the offense. We're burying the lead because Jalen was awful, awful. And I don't care what A.J. Brown comes to his defense this time. Everybody was there. Everybody could see it. And I said, don't believe me. Listen to Jason Kelsey. He told you. Awful day for the offense. Awful day for the quarterback. Um, but it's not the end of the world. Everybody has bad practices.
Yeah, for sure. The offense really didn't have the best day, right? But you mentioned the offensive line and its value, especially in this running game, and you know I'm really curious about a guy like Lane Johnson. He's someone. He's along with Jason Kelsey. He's the elder statesman on the offensive line. And I was listening to the Eagle Eye podcast. Shout out to Ruben Frank and Dave Zangaro. They mentioned their contact with Lane Johnson and how he's been responding to to that ankle. That ankle's been bothering him for the past handful of years, and he attributed some of the mental health issues to that ankle being such a hindrance, and he was really questioning whether or not he would be able to come back to play if he can get stability on it.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about Lane? What has been your perspective or your assessment of Lane Johnson thus far in camp?
Yeah. I mean, Lane, I was talking about that last year. I don't think people knew how seriously his ankle surgery was. It was completely reconstructive ankle surgery. Um, and he admitted today he couldn't even run last year at training camp. He was just hobbling around. He couldn't run at all, and he was just making do. And he really thought that maybe he had hit a wall and his career was going to be over, and that sort of played into what you were saying with the anxiety and there were some other issues as well, but that was a big part of it. Um, he's such a good player.
Such a good player, top five
Yeah.
tackle in this league, in my opinion.
What's interesting, after Lane spoke today, I started thinking one of the surprises to me in camp so far was Isaac Seumalo being at right guard. And we all thought there was going to be a competition or at least something with Isaac and Jack Driscoll.
Right.
Jack Driscoll hasn't even played at right guard. Um, and Suo Pettis sort of been the backup to Isaac Seumalo. And Jack Driscoll's been the backup to Lane Johnson. And after Lane spoke today, it started to clarify me. I'm like, he's still got this ankle problem. And I always say about Lane, for people that don't know, Lane was a was a quarterback in high school, right? He was a tremendous athlete. He's a quarterback in junior college, as a matter of fact. He was a great athlete. He's 6'6". He should probably be about 240 pounds if he wasn't an NFL player and he wasn't in the weight room every day and he
Yeah,
wasn't.
he says he has to fight to keep that weight on. I heard him say that at one point.
Oh
He
yeah,
has to actually fight to keep the
oh
weight on.
yeah,
Like he will lose it.
yeah. He's a guy that after he retires, he's going to be about 240 pounds in about 2 years. He has to fight to keep that weight on. Um, and the point I'm trying to make is there are certain guys that are big guys, like Jordan Davis is a big guy.
Right.
Jordan Mailata is a big guy. Lane Johnson is big because he's in the weight room and he's an NFL player and he works to keep that weight on. And when you don't have a natural frame to carry that kind of weight, well, what happens? Ankles, knees. So, and plus Lane is post 30. So the Eagles are concerned about that ankle as Lane is. Now he's feeling much better. But if something happens again, they got to have somebody to go. And that's why they're probably having Driscoll focus on right tackle as a contingency plan because of that ankle.
Understood. If you guys are tuned into Football 24/7 with John McMullen, I'm your host, Tone DeShields II. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. Make sure you guys are also subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Also, shout out to our sponsor, Oceans Casino Resort. There they have the infamous Gallery Sportsbook, the new and improved Gallery Sportsbook, where you can get food, drinks, you can place your bets, and you can watch the games. The one-stop shop for everything you need when it comes to your sports betting and also just catching a great vacation vibe. Ocean Casino, I had a great time there when we had our draft special, and I had the opportunity to stay there. And I got to say, the rooms are immaculate, the food is immaculate, just the overall experience is immaculate. So if you guys ever get the opportunity and you need to get to the sea, you need to get to the ocean side, make sure you guys stop at Ocean Casino Resort. Great place, great place to really get have some fun. Now, also JAKIB Sports, the post game show, that's going to be live at Ocean Casinos, the gallery as well. We're going to be doing that every single game day. You're going to see Seth Joyner there, Devin Caney, Derek Gunn, and Mike Missinelli. A lot of legends on that panel. Make sure you guys lock in on that as well, live from the gallery at Ocean Casino Resort. Now, John, we're getting close to being able to close the show. I have just a final question for you. Are there any players who haven't necessarily stood out to you? Maybe some young guys, or maybe even some veterans who are trying to, get a hold on to a roster spot. Are there any people who just haven't really stood out, or are there any guys who are on the bubble?
Well, I gave a game ball today to Davion Taylor, so there's a guy who stood out. He had an interception today at another pass breakup. TJ Edwards was talking about him after practice, really showing up. I think a lot of people have forgotten about him because the Eagles have some other options with Kaiser White and Nakobe Dean, but he's really shown up early in camp. We talked about Marcus had my game ball day one, so he's really shown up. As far as guys underachieving, again, offensively, things look really, really bad today, but they were okay on day one. Jalen Reagor took a step back. That'll probably excite people more than this because he was solid on day one of practice. Fell down on a route, which caused one of the interceptions today. Bradbury had a pass breakup. Offensively, it was not good today. This is one of those days where, Nick Sirianni might throw the film in the trash and say, forget
Well, let
about
me
it.
ask you this then, because one of our viewers in the chat, he has an interesting perspective, and I'm curious to know what your perspective is on this. Clearly the offense had a bad day, right? But Was it bad offense, good defense, or was it mediocre defense and bad offense? What was it exactly?
I think it was bad offense. Like I said, it was inaccuracy from the quarterback, bad routes. I just mentioned Jalen Rager falling down, or not falling down, but he sort of stumbled, which caused one of the interceptions. Um, you know, the, the worst play of the game was Jalen Hurts' interception when he tried to force the ball and Avonte Maddox intercepted it. And here's the theme to me. I talked about it. We hadn't gotten to the Maddox play, and Dallas Goddard even said after Avonte baited the quarterback. He used that term again, not me. Listen to Jason Kelsey. Listen to Dallas Goddard. Dallas said Avonte baited the quarterback into throwing this pass. It was a terrible pass. It was. There's no other way to say it. Um, and that's the kind of stuff you want to see improvement on. Now it's July. It's very early in camp, but for those who were criticizing Derek Gunn and his report, everybody has bad practices, and I
It
was
happened.
surprised. Everybody has bad practices. Now everybody got all on D Gunn, who's a great reporter, and look, the description was probably off, but that's somebody's description that Derek is relaying. Um, you don't take 10 straight reps in OTA practices. Okay. But the overriding point was he had a bad OTA practice. So what? He had a bad training camp practice today, and everybody saw it. And now AJ Brown can't go on Twitter and say, you know what, people are making it up, because we're not making it up. The center told you, the tight end told you. It was bad. But, so you have to be, my point to all this is you have to be realistic. Jalen Hurts is not mentally weak. He doesn't need people jumping on their sword protecting him. He needs to get better. He needs constructive criticism. Um, and the Eagles should give it to him and say, look, this is not acceptable. This type of practice is not acceptable. That's how bad this practice was.
Well, I completely understand your sentiment. For me personally, I don't do well when someone coddles me, right? I do better with abrasive criticism. I do well when people tell me what I did wrong. What I can improve on. Where can I be sharper at? You don't get anywhere by coddling a person. Now, of course, it all depends on who you're talking to. Some people have different things that make them tick differently. But overall, Jalen Hurts specifically, he's someone who likes to be coached hard. He's a coach's kid, and it's just that simple. But John, we're going to end it here. Once again, I appreciate you for always making yourself available and being the trooper that you already are. The amount of work you put in for JAKIB Sports and all your respective other entities is really something to admire. And once again, man, John McMullen, Football 24/7. This guy continues to put that work in, and you guys, the fans, you need to appreciate this man. While we have him, you never know. He may go to a different market if you guys keep pushing his buttons about this 4-4-3-3-4. You never know. So, John, stay in Philly, man. You're doing great work for JAKIB Sports, and once again, man, I appreciate you. But Eagles fans, look at it like this: you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days in camp. It's all right because 9 times out of 10, what you're hearing and what you're seeing the quarterback try things. You're seeing the defense try things. You're seeing the skill position guys maybe try different route combinations or different footwork combinations. You're at the end of the day, this is a time for the offense, for the defense to get all those kinks out, to get all those bad throws out. Now, look, ultimately, we're not going to really know what this offense is or what this defense is until the bullets start flying. Not even just in the preseason, but during the regular season, week 1 in Detroit. That's when you're going to find out who your Philadelphia Eagles team is. Me personally, I give this team about 4 or 5 weeks before we know exactly what they are. But when the bullets start flying, that's when you're going to be able to judge these players. Don't judge them in moments of peace. Don't judge them in controlled environments. Judge them in moments of chaos. Judge them when they have to duck grenades and duck bullets, when guys are trying to take their heads off. those are the moments to really judge this team and really figure out where they are and how far they can go. But I was joined by the infamous John McMullen. He continues to give you guys dope insight, and I want you guys to continue to smash that like button on JAKIB Sports. Subscribe to the channel. Also, check out his work on JAKIBSports.com. That's JAKIB Sports.com. On top of that, make sure you guys lock in on our other content, Birds 365 with Jody McDonald and John McMullen, Sports Take with Barrett Brooks, Derek Gunn, and Rob Ellis, the National Football Show with Dan Cilio, our new show that's going to be coming out towards the end of August with Rick Ciratella, the Playbook. Also, our JAKIB Sports postgame show that's going to be coming very soon when the season starts with Seth Joyner, Devin Caney, Derek Gunn, and Mike Missinelli. As you can see, JAKIB Sports is in full effect, and we're putting the pressure on all and on everyone. So everyone, keep your eyes peeled. A lot of things are to come for JAKIB Sports. John, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I expect a bounce back from the offense tomorrow, and that's what it's about. Coming back, dealing with the adversity, taking a step back, but getting better from it. And I expect the offense to have a much better day tomorrow morning.
Absolutely, man. And you guys, the fans, it's all right. Take it easy. Things will get better. This is only the beginning. But you're going to find out more from your guys, John McMullen and Tone DeShields II. This was Football 24/7 by way of JAKIB Sports with John McMullen. You guys take care, stay humble, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay hungry. And we're out of here, you guys. Enjoy your weekend.